What is going on, guys? Jeff here for Mad Hatter's Reef, and today we got a brand new video for you. We're going to be taking a look at how I would go about stocking a 45 and 90 gallon aquarium. We're going to do it in one list. But before we jump into that, if this is your first time being here, this is where I talk about everything reef tank, saltwater tank, fish, corals, and vertebrates related. So if you're into that kind of thing and want more, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell so you can be notified every time that I upload a new video, because I put out a new video every single week. Now, this week's list actually came from a suggestion from a viewer, and they said that they'd like to see a list for a 45-gallon aquarium and then change their mind to a 90-gallon aquarium. And that's actually what we're going to do in today's list. We're going to take a look at what fish I would put into a 45-gallon aquarium and then continue that into a 90-gallon aquarium. And I'll tell you at what point I would no longer add any of these fish. We're going to do it in top 10 style like we typically do here. But without further ado, let's jump into the top 10 saltwater fish that I would put into a 45-gallon / 90-gallon aquarium. And kicking things off with number 10, we are going to take a look at the Bicolor Blenny. Now, as far as price point on this guy, it has crept up over the last year or so. Obviously, a lot of situational cost built into this fish, and many of the saltwater fish that we'll talk about on this list. Typically, you can find this guy right now anywhere from $25 all the way up to like $35, depending on where you're doing your shopping. And this is a great fish for removing algae from a smaller aquarium. These guys will eat constantly. They're always going to be on the rocks, checking stuff out, perch. They're very interesting fish. Had one in the 90-gallon aquarium and absolutely loved it. As far as stats on this guy, he is a easy to care for fish, peaceful in his temperament, herbivore, is reef safe, grows upwards of 4 inches, and requires a minimum tank size of 30 gallons. One caveat for this guy: you need to make sure that you give him plenty of hiding places, because he likes to eat and then hide, eat and hide. Awesome fish. Check him out, the Bicolor Blenny. Coming in at number 9 on our stocking plan for a 45 / 90 gallon, I would be putting a Cardinal Fish in there. These guys are captive bred, so anytime that you can add a captive bred saltwater fish to your tank, I definitely recommend that you do that, because they're more adapted to aquarium life. As far as price point on these guys, because they're captive bred and have been captive bred to infinity, the price isn't too bad either. A small Cardinal fish you can find anywhere from $20 up to $30, depending on its size, and it's already adapted to aquarium life, so it's going to be probably one of the more successful fish that you could put into a reef tank. Now, these guys, I typically like to have them in pairs in smaller aquariums, and if I was going to have a larger aquarium, I would consider having more, but they can become territorial amongst themselves, so that's something that you need to take into consideration, especially when you are thinking about this fish and the size tank that you have. As far as stats on this guy, he's easy to care for, semi-aggressive in his temperament, carnivore in his diet, is reef safe, grows upwards of 3 inches, and requires a minimum tank size of 30 gallons. Coming in at number 8 on our top 10 is the Flame Hog. Now, this is a very interesting saltwater fish. Doesn't do a whole lot from a work standpoint, not much of a worker, but he's definitely an interesting saltwater fish. He'll spend the most of his day perching on the rock. He'll swim for maybe 3 seconds and then perch, swim for 3 seconds and perch, kind of checking out, seeing what's going on in the tank. Very interesting in its behavior, but again, a fish that is a little on the aggressive side, so that's something that you need to take into consideration. If you're going to be adding one of these guys to a 40-gallon aquarium, make sure he's one of the last fish added to the tank. As far as stats on this guy, he is easy to care for, semi-aggressive, we already talked about that. Carnivore in his diet, is reef safe with caution. They can be a little picky every now and again. They grow upwards of 4 inches and require a minimum tank size of 30 gallons. Coming in at number 7 on our top 10 saltwater fish for a 45-gallon into a 90-gallon is the snowflake clownfish. Now, any clownfish really would do, but I am pretty partial to the snowflake. They are a captive bred designer / clownfish, and I actually do have a top 10 list on designer clownfish as well as regular clownfish. So if you want to check those out, those videos will be in the description below. And I really have a hard time imagining a saltwater tank without any clownfish. Actually, every tank that I personally own has clownfish in it. And I guess the same could be said about Cardinal Fish as well. Now, as far as care level with these guys, they are easy to care for. They are semi-aggressive in their temperament, omnivore in their diet. They are considered reef safe, grow upwards of 3 inches, and require a minimum tank size of 20 gallons. Now, again, captive bred saltwater fish, definitely the way to go. And they have come down in price over the years. So that's the benefit of captive breeding. Usually they're pretty expensive when they first kind of come to market, especially these designer clownfish, but eventually get a little bit more realistic as far as price point goes, and definitely it supports aquaculture, which is always a good thing. Coming in at number 6, and probably the last fish that I would include on a 40-gallon build, 45-gallon build, and every fish from this point on, I would probably consider only in a 90-gallon aquarium. So this is the line. So this is the blue spotted jawfish. I'm sure your eyes are working perfectly fine, and you can read that for yourself. As far as price point on this guy, a little bit higher on the price point, $150. That's pretty typical. These guys, I've seen them anywhere from $20 to $160, really depending on their size and where you're buying them. They are a very interesting saltwater fish. They have their little space, and that's about it. They're not a fish that's going to swim around all over the tank. They have their little den, and they hide in there. So hopefully, if you buy one of these and put them in your tank, that they choose the right side of the aquarium, because they very well could put their home on the back side of the aquarium. That's something that you need to take into consideration if you are going to purchase one of these guys. As far as care level, they are moderate care level, semi-aggressive in their temperament, carnivore in their diet. They are considered reef safe, grow upwards of 3.5 inches, and we require a minimum tank size of 30 gallons. A absolute beautiful saltwater fish, the blue dot jawfish. Coming in at number 5, and the first fish that I'd put into a 90-gallon aquarium, both from a stocking plan standpoint as well as the first fish on this list, and that is the fat-headed Sunburst Anthias. This is probably also one of the most gorgeous Anthias as far as I'm concerned, and the coloration is just phenomenal. You got pinks, you got oranges, the striping, gorgeous, gorgeous fish. Now, as far as care level, this guy is a moderate care level fish, peaceful in its temperament, has a carnivore diet. A lot of your Anthias are planktivores, so they need a lot of feedings often. They don't eat a ton of food in one sitting, so they need that constant food and fed multiple times through the day, and that's why they're a moderate care level fish. These guys are considered reef safe, grow upwards of 5 inches, and require a minimum tank size of 70 gallons. Coming in at number 4 on our top 10 saltwater fish for a 45-gallon / 90-gallon, and that is the Coral Beauty. Now, as far as price point goes, the captive bred variety of Coral Beauties is much more expensive than the wild caught, and a lot of that has to do with that this is a newly bred saltwater fish, and like we've already kind of talked about, over time, this price will probably go down. Now, one thing that I would take into consideration if you're looking to pick up one of these fish is I probably would buy it at your local fish store and not online. The reason for this is because there tends to be a lot of variations as far as coloration goes with this fish, and some of them are not as pretty as others. So if you want to make sure that you get the best looking Coral Beauty that you possibly can, it's probably better that you pick it out from your local fish store where maybe they have a couple. Pick the one that's the prettiest, because there tends to be a lot of variety in their colors and color formations. This fish is easy to care for, semi-aggressive in its temperament, omnivore, has reef safe with caution written all over it, and can grow upwards of 4 inches and requires a minimum tank size of 70 gallons. An absolute beautiful saltwater fish. Buy it captive bred, always a good thing to support. The Coral Beauty coming in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 on our top 10 saltwater fish for a 45-gallon into a 90-gallon. Definitely a fish that I would only put into a 90-gallon or bigger, the one-spot Foxface. Now, as far as price point goes with this guy, typical asking price is anywhere from 70-ish all the way up to 120, depending on its size and its availability. This is a moderate care level fish, peaceful in its temperament, reef safe with caution, herbivore, grows upwards of 8 inches and requires a minimum tank size of 70 gallons. Coming in at number 2 on our top 10 saltwater fish is the yellow tang. Now, specifically the captive bred yellow tang. Now, the difference between captive bred and wild caught is your captive bred tangs are going to be much smaller than your wild caught because they're due to mostly regulation. So, wild caught fish always going to be bigger. Captive bred usually going to be smaller. These guys are easy to care for, semi-aggressive in their temperament, so it should be one of the last fish that you would add to an aquarium. They are herbivores, reef safe, grow upwards of 8 inches, and require a minimum tank size of 90 gallons. Now, in a lot of cases, tanks are typically needed to go into a larger aquarium, but where this is a captive bred fish, and you're also going to get it a little bit smaller, a 90-gallon aquarium for this guy, definitely feasible. And coming in at the number 1 spot on our top 10, the Flame Angel. Now, this is a fish that I would not put with a Coral Beauty. We already had one on the list. It's either one or the other, not both. They are a moderate care level fish, semi-aggressive in their temperament, omnivore in their diet. They are reef safe with caution. They can be pickers, so that's something you need to make sure that you figure out prior to adding them to your tank. They grow upwards of 4 inches and require a minimum tank size of 70 gallons. Alright folks, that's going to do it for this one. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you want to learn more about saltwater fish, check this video out. I will see you over there.